The next concept, it's a tough one. It is such a subtle one, and there are people, on different ends of this particular subject because there are people that are very domineering and controlling and opinionated, loud, and there are people that are very soft and gentle and easily manipulated, and they look like human doormats at times. So what I what I've seen is that there are people trained from their earliest days to acquiesce to another person's will. Oftentimes they're female, and they've been trained to acquiesce to their father's will, and which was the training ground and the grooming for them to acquiesce to the will of their husband and just people in general. And so that's kind of from my generation. So I'm a baby boomer, and that was pretty normal. There were people who had rights and were expected to lead, and there were people who didn't have rights and were expected to follow. And if you lived according to that, paper cutout division of humanity, what you will find at the end of the day is are individuals whose humanity has just been gutted. They're a shell of a human being. Uh, you will see them unable to advocate for their own children. You will see them traded, traded for another woman and demeaned and disparaged and disrespected in every way. And you will see them in despair towards the end of their lives. And that's because someone they've been brainwashed, essentially, all of their lives. And frequently, one of the things that's used to brainwash people in the United States is religion. And I would say that, all of the religions that you generally think of when someone says the word religion, they're patriarchal. They set men and maleness up on a pedestal and at the expense of females. So I'm speaking in general terms about a large swath of my personal experiences throughout my life. 62 years on the planet. So it's not insignificant, it's significant, and I pay attention. The way out of this prison, if you've been gutted, is humility. And not the kind of humility, not the brand that you were fed at the local church or by the men in your lives or anybody, your mom who was domineering, really powerful, whoever it was that told you that you had to be their personal servant or slave or whatever it was, whatever you experienced in your, in this existence. It's recognizing real power is in God's hands, the God of your understanding, and recognizing who you are in relationship to that power. And who you are is a precious, precious entity. And no one and nothing can take that away from you. They can take your life. They can take your children. They can kill your family, but no one can dispossess you of your inherent preciousness. So, and when we know that, who we are, the very essence of our being, if we value and appreciate who we are, then when we are angry, that's valid. When we are sad, that's valid. Whatever we experience in this world, and it is a range of experiences from emotions to understanding, those things are valid. They're not being filtered by someone else's opinion of us. Suddenly, we're real. We have a vibrant life. We have access to our personhood. And everything that comes to us through this world validates and affirms who we are. Suddenly the world isn't against us. Suddenly the world is for us. So here we go, May 5th. Humility was a tough concept for me to comprehend. Taught from my childhood to place the wants and needs of others always above my own, I equated humility with taking care of others and ignoring my own feelings and needs. In Al-Anon, I have learned that true humility is not degrading. It doesn't require that I neglect my own needs. In fact, humility is not measured by how much I do for other people, but my willingness to do my part in my relationship with the God of my understanding. I begin to learn humility when I take the first step. By admitting I am powerless, I make room for the possibility that a power greater than myself can do all those things that are beyond my reach. In other words, I begin to learn about what is and is not my responsibility. As this becomes clear, I am better able to do my part for myself and for others, and better able to ask God to do the rest. Today's reminder. Part of learning humility is learning to contribute to my own well-being. Today, I will do something loving for myself that I'd normally do for someone else. Here's the quote. We cannot tell what may happen to us in this strange medley of life, but we can decide what happens in us, how we can take it, what we do with it, and that is what really counts in the end. End quote. And the author is Joseph Fort Newton. So as I was reading this, one of the things I was thinking about is the sexism in my statements, generalizing about males and females, is how many males in our society really are servants and are disrespected for their service to their families and the humble ways in which they serve others at work. And I don't want to add to that pain. I just want to acknowledge that as well. And one of the things that I think the addicts in your life are wrestling with, a good number of them, is they're typically close to their moms. They typically are kind of tender-hearted souls, and their struggle to become men, they have this conflict of shedding that sensitive and soft and thoughtful side of themselves in order to enter, the workforce and win and dominate. And, they have to really shut down a very vital part of themselves, and they're wrestling with that. They're wrestling with that. They're wrestling with their connection to their mom. It's separation and individuation. They're having a hard time with that. But they're having a hard time with that side of themselves that we label as female, and it isn't. So remember that holy priesthood, that there are people caught in addiction that are quite loving, quite sensitive, kind. When they're actively addicted, there are a lot of other things, and that's the addiction. That's the addiction, talking and acting and exercising control over them. You're not seeing who that person really is. They're buried alive by the addiction. I just would like to humbly suggest that the addict in your life might be quite sensitive. And in the soft sense as well, not in the rebellious sense, and hyper reactive to anyone's suggestion about how they should live their lives, because they really feel like they want to please others. Okay, so it's complicated. There's the rebels who don't care, and there are other people that care very much and are trying to find their way, and there's just too much noise around them. And they would be better off kind of separate and off, finding themselves away from the family, and instead they're in your basement. Whew. Anyway, I pray if something resonates with you that you take notes and you pay attention and you think long and hard when something hits the mark in your life and for the loved one in your life, and let go of what doesn't fit. Just let go of the rest. Remember, keep what you like and let go of the rest. Blessings on your day.